Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Acquainted Fates, a Genshin Impact podcast. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Recollection Step, a Grand Archive TCG podcast, part of the Maindeck podcast family. I'm Dan.
And I'm Taylor. And yeah, like Dan said, you are listening to the Recollection Step. This is currently the only Grand Archive podcast being recorded from my parents' basement. So we got that going for us.
Yeah, we've got a little bit of a scuffed audio situation here, so apologies to the audio listeners who are used to the clean, dulcet tones of Taylor, but we got the quality of the AirPod rocking out right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I spent too much money pulling for Shilonen and Genshin, and so I had to sell my house and move back in with my parents, so here we go. It's
a problem a lot of people are facing in the world right now, actually.
Yeah, I imagine there's a lot of people who can kind of empathize, so...
Leave a comment below if you are also moving into your parents' house after pulling in Genshin.
Dan, how have you been?
I've been good, man. It's been crazy. It's been a ton of fun with Mortal Ambition finally in our hands. So much brewing and testing, and it's just the most exciting time every time.
Yeah, no, 100%. This set has been so much fun to explore. It feels like they're really kind of honing in on like what power level they want to hit. Weaves wants to hit with the game, and they've just taken a lot of really creative directions with this set as well. And obviously, the flavor of it all is been fantastic. All the cards are the art is amazing. They all look great. They're all so on theme. So far, like my experience with the set, A+ set, just 10 out of 10. It's been very good.
Yeah, it feels, I mean, we'll be talking about it mostly in this episode, but it really does feel like across the board, kind of a lot of cards are really hitting, a lot of really good low rarity reprints for people to pick up that are clutch cards. Feels like, I mean, there's a few themes in here where we still have to see if they like really find a good niche, but pretty much, I don't know, a lot of the stuff that seemed like it had any chance of being good, we were doing testing. It's like, oh, actually, this is pretty sweet.
Yeah, pretty much everything we've played with so far has had like has a lot of things going for it so far. Like there's not anything we've tried that's been like, I don't even know why this is in the set. So it feels very cohesive. It's great.
Yeah. And one thing, just about the overarching set structure for Mortal Ambition now is that we only have 2 champions, 2 decks this time. Our previous large sets, quote unquote, because the small sets can get kind of large now too. Our previous ones had 3 and 4, but of course that was just to get the groundwork set up, right? So now we have all 7 champions, and now I think going forward, I assume we're going to see sets like this with 2, and I hope that's the case because it feels like both these champions got a lot of just room to be fleshed out and feel so like we started playing right away and we're like, oh man, like both these are really good. Like we're finding what I think we think are pretty competitive lists for everything. And even then we're still like debating card choice and everything. It's just nice to have that extra space. Feels good.
Yeah, no, I'm really enjoying it. The other thing too is they have like 2 different level 3s for each champion. They only included 1 for each champion this time around. So it's, what I really like about it is it just feels like there's not anything that's kind of left behind or like left as a second thought. There's a lot of champions from Dawn of Ashes and Alchemical Revolution that just felt like they were not, I mean, like they just couldn't have been given enough attention. Not that they even like, I mean, they obviously weren't given enough attention, but just like the ability to flesh them out was just not there because you didn't have enough cards, you didn't have enough time. And they didn't have enough support. And so they just kind of like feel by the wayside. So hopefully like moving forward, people, if they keep kind of the same quantity of champions around and quantity of levels, people are going to be able to find kind of a champion that fits with them that also like just kind of works pretty well. Like hopefully we won't be going back to a situation in like Alchemical Revolution where people were like, oh, hey, Polcock's really cool. But why would I not just play Diana? Or like, what does he do better? Right. I think we're gonna, hopefully move away from a lot of that. And obviously, you can't like it's impossible to balance everything so that everything is so like everything's on the exact same playing field. Like you're always going to have something that's performing a little bit better or worse than other things, but hopefully things are going to be a little bit more kind of in line with each other moving forward.
Yeah, you mentioned the alternate level threes, and like in the history of the game, very few alternate level threes have even made a serious impact.
Mhm.
Lorraine's, was largely played. Arasana's is kind of the one that's been,
I
getting a
mean,
little bit more attention.
I would say
Um,
actually Arasana, both of her level threes have seen the same amount of play.
Actually, okay, that might be true and fair. But yeah, like a lot of the other ones, just I might be forgetting. No, Xander's had a little bit of both, but mostly Blinding Steel. The
Yeah.
only time Karazi's chosen gets played is just as a level 3 target for Scepter of Lumina to hit, right,
Mhm.
and like you can't be killed, so it's like you get to pretend to be Jin for a turn, kind of though, not
No, what you
really.
do, you level to Xander 3. What Korhazi's chosen, I think.
Yeah.
You get your Spell Shroud Stealth, and then you innervate for whatever basic element you're on. You go back to level 2, and now you're basically invincible. And you do it all again next turn. He was the original Jin. Actually, Jin is taking his stick.
Yeah, that was true, except even through innervating and having the spell shroud and the stealth, you were not at all invincible. So, and you had to work so much for it. Jin feels so good now to just be like, yeah, this is my game now, and we get to fight over numbers and math. We can talk about that at some point here, but I think we'll
Oh
have
yeah, we'll be getting to that.
yeah. Well, I know it for sure. We'll have future episodes. We're going to dive, I think, a little more
Yeah.
specifically into Jin and Kongming lists. We have, in particular, just so the listeners know the timeline of everything. We are going to have in 2 weeks. The team will be at Ascent Toronto.
Not even like 2 weeks. It's like less than a week and a half at this point. Like we're flying out a week from tomorrow. Um, so like there's just yeah. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, no, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm
yeah.
totally off. I unfortunately can't make it there, but that kind of threw me off here. You're going to be competing then. So okay, so in 2 weeks we will have another episode, and that episode will, I would say, has a reasonable shot of going into Jin and Kongming in their place in the metagame, considering that will
Oh yeah.
be, in part a recap of Toronto, and we'll get to see if the champions made an impact.
hmm Yeah. I mean, yeah, and really, like, we haven't had that much time to even like look at a lot of these cards yet. Um, they were spoiled. They were just linked to the index. I think the day of the set release, um, is when they were added to the official index, and they were put on TCG Player like a day or two before that.
It was
Uh,
really tight. It was
so
definitely all in the week of release.
yeah,
So
yep. So like we haven't known what like hardly any of these cards are until basically like just now. So
yeah, you've had about
it's
we've had about a 2 weeks, like more or less, to even be looking at these things and
yeah,
trying to figure it out. At most, it's actually
yep,
probably more like a week and a half for that too. So
yeah,
it's been intense. But like with Toronto in just a week, it's just so intense to try and
yep.
explore this. I'm so disappointed that I can't make it, but I'm very excited for you guys to get to explore that fresh format.
Yeah, it feels a lot like Ontario did getting ready for that, but it also I think these champions might have more of an impact than they did at Ascent Ontario,
Mm.
um, especially just because they're so different too. Like Tanaris felt very much like Lorraine when we were moving into that new meta game when Alchemical Revolution released. Um, Arasana felt a little bit like Rai. Like they both kind of just like were like turboing to level 3 and doing like fun like spell things and um, just doing a bunch of indirect damage to your opponent. And Diana had like she was a little bit more unique because the gun
Yeah.
and bullet mechanic is very novel, but it's still like a lot of her decks were like pretty aggressive and they were attacking, so they felt very similar to kind of like what everybody else was already doing. Um, at least in comparison to what I've seen so far from Jin and Kongming, like they feel very unique and very different. compared to anything we've seen so far. Jin, especially, just like his level 3 having immortality when it's not your end step, just it changes the game completely. It's like you're playing not Grand Archive anymore in a good way, not like
Yeah.
like it flips everything on its head in a really interesting and fun way. Like it creates this fun puzzle you have to figure out for both sides of the game.
This has been my experience so far, which is that Jin on the surface level is clearly the more straightforward, obvious deck. But if you ever get in a Jin mirror match and you're both level 3, that's actually like, I would rather figure out a Kongming deck I've never seen before than have to try and work through the math of that sounds really bad because I really enjoy it. Like you said, it's like,
Yeah.
it's just so much more. It's extremely complicated. It's going to be really skill testing for players who get into those Jin mirrors to position the life totals exactly correct to be able to take the game. Because there's this fight of, I need to push enough damage on you that you can't potentially heal it back down while not putting myself into lethal at the same time. And there's a real push and pull to giving your opponent a bunch of damage to then, they potentially get a bunch of damage back at you the next turn.
Yep. Yeah, Jin, with his power is basically scaling off of how many damage counters he has. Trying to actually like get him into lethal range is always going to be walking a tightrope, and so far it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but yeah, jumping into kind of like, since we haven't had a ton of time to really look at the set as a whole and get into exactly what Jin is doing, exactly what Kongming is doing, and kind of what makes them tick, and really like how you can take these champions and use them to their fullest potential. I think today let's kind of just go over what the kind of winners or what the existing metagame can come away with here from the new set, because there's a lot of like just really fun cards in general that were released that just beef up some existing decks really well, and kind of just might change the landscape of what we're seeing even without the addition of the new champions. And even beyond that, like you mentioned earlier, just offhand, like there was a ton of awesome reprints in this set. It's a great time to jump into the game, by the way, if you're new or someone who's kind of like wants to get their feet wet or just dip their toes in the water, or is kind of getting ready to play the game or whatever. Like this is the perfect time. This set has like a ton of awesome reprints. We've got the long-awaited Dungeon Guide reprint that everybody's been so excited about. So we're going to have a lot more dungeon guides out there. And then as far as like rare cards go, Zephyr, I think, has not been as difficult to acquire, but it also was like a rare in Dawn of Ashes. Same Phalanx Captain. So like those two, getting some more supply out of there. And then there's just like a ton of reprints of, even though they were commons and uncommons in earlier sets, it's just like they're staples to have. Like they make a lot of these decks tick in their basic element. You've got things like Clumsy Apprentice, Creative Shock, and Hasty Messenger and Fire that do a lot to help Fire do whatever it wants to do, like dump cards into its graveyard and just churn through a bunch of its deck. You've got cool things in Water, Water Barrier, and Refracting Missile that were both reprinted that help it kind of play a bit more of a defensive game while accruing advantage over time. And then, the aforementioned Wind reprints as well. So just like a ton of sweet cards to help you kind of build your collection up if you're just jumping in with this with Mortal Ambition.
Yeah, and I think it just wasn't explicitly said, but I really did appreciate that Phalanx Captain and Zephyr got rarity downshifted now, because they are uncommons now instead, which is just really, it makes it easier to get those cards. They're such especially Zephyr. Zephyr is such a win staple card. It's something that you're gonna want to have copies of. And there was a lot of speculation that Dungeon Guide would be rarity upshifted because of how strong and stuff it is, but nope, it's still a rare. Even despite it being a rare, though, these sets are big in Grand Archive. I had a bunch of people coming into my stream when I was cracking my cases last week and asking about, how are my Dungeon Guide pulls? They heard it was short printed or whatever. And like the thing about Grand Archive, if you're unaware that Weaves of the Shore does, that more companies should do. It's add it to the list of things more companies should do. Hey, if you're another company, you should do this. They posted on the index as soon as the set was live the quantity of every card printed, rough quantity, very, close sometimes, but about the right quantity of the card printed, so that then we just had a couple people to went off chat. They pulled up the thing and like, yep, okay, look, it's printed in the same number as the rest of the rares. So it's unless Weebs is lying on the index, then it is not short printed. We confirmed with the quantity we pulled everything. I pulled the same amount of them roughly as I did any other rare.
Yeah. I mean, that's another thing too. The set also just has, I didn't confirm for rares, but I did check for super rares. But this set has 6 more super rares than Alchemical Revolution did. So it is also just going to feel like each individual card is a little bit rarer than Alchemical Revolution if you're comparing it to that, or potentially even Dawn of Ashes. I didn't compare it to that one, but things will be slightly more rare because of that. Yeah, so in my opinion, there might have been like 1 or 2 too many rares and super rares, just to like, it just makes things a little bit difficult to pull everything that you want if you're opening a lot of quantity of boxes. But at the same time, it's really nice because as long as these cards are like useful and in demand, that means people are going to want to continue to open boxes for these cards. So they're not just sitting there on store shelves like we saw with FTC. Like stores are going to be happy to get these boxes in and sell them to their customers because they know they're going to be able to get them off the shelves and move them if they need to. So
yeah, that's always the tightrope to walk, and it's very difficult. But I think the goal, and I think we can see this too from Weebs doing things like making the ultra rares full art and kind of making them a little splashier. I think they really want to try and prop up the value of the boxes just a little bit beyond just those 3 foil slots and then the extremely rare chance for a CSR or CUR.
Yep.
I can appreciate that too. It is nice to have the rest of the box have some value. So it's not just like, well, I hope that I hit a good foil on my 3 foils.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you hit like 3 foil commons and like only one of them is like a favorable wins or something, like that's a little rough. So
and one of them is Idle Thoughts.
Yeah,
I got one of those.
Oh no! I mean, I got some protective fractals, and like, I mean,
yeah,
they're fine. They look good. I mean, the foils actually are they're gorgeous in this set. For the YouTube watchers, I'm holding one up, showing off the shine
on Taylor's laptop webcam now.
This is actually like a fairly decent webcam.
Is it? Oh, I can't tell because of our recording software doesn't make it clear.
Well, this is my laptop webcam, but I think it's like not half bad.
Okay. Well, I'll see when I do the editing if that was even visible at all.
That's true. I don't know. It looked good from my feedback that I saw on the screen. So,
all right.
I was going to have you describe it for the listeners, but actually,
I wasn't really sure.
Just say it's shiny.
I think it was Kongming too, maybe.
Yeah. Mostly, I wanted you to describe just the good plating and the excellent foiling and all that excellent stuff that you can't see it over audio. So
yeah, but I mean that is somewhere that's an area of TCG production that the Grand Archive team has had locked down from day one. They've been knocking them out of the park, and they've gone through some iterations. Like we saw in Mercurial Heart, some adjustments to the printing of the foils that were not super well received. People weren't, I was saying this, like they were a little. There's contrast was up or something, that the colors were like double printed. It felt like it was kind of weird.
They were just like, they were a little dark. I think it was just more of like like an ink quality issue. I don't think they actually tweaked anything to their foiling process for that set. So, but if there was a quality issue with it, they fixed it with this set because they look amazing. So
yeah. And these are also the ones that, for people who missed the live stream, these are now the foils that you can actually put in a rice cooker and cook, and they will. Wait, Taylor, did you not? Did you miss the part of the live stream?
I didn't hear about this. No.
Oh my goodness. Okay, this was the coolest thing.
Does this get like fluffy and puffy? Can I after I cook this in my rice cooker, can I fry it with like peas and carrots and make fried rice or what?
Yeah, there's actually made of rice. No, I'm just kidding. That's not true. They have improved the foils to reduce their vulnerability to humidity and their pringling factor, their curling factor. To the point where on this live stream that they did before Mortal Ambition launched, they had a segment where they put in a foil from a previous set. They put in a common from, I think, from Mortal Ambition, just a non-foil card. And they put in a foil from Mortal Ambition. They put those all into a rice cooker and turned it on. Because that will give you a very strong humidity curling factor. And they put it out and they pulled everything out. And I think it was like Fractured Crown foil was a Pringle for sure. It was curled all the way. The common was just, kind of messed up a little bit. The foil, it did not look right like it came right out of a pack. Okay, it didn't look like that. There was a slight bend to it, and that's it. Just after going into a rice cooker. And if you take a Magic the Gathering card and do that, then you're actually going to end up with like one of those paradox toruses that's going to like bend together, I think, and create a
Mobius loop.
Mobius loop. That's the one. Yes, you're going to create a Mobius loop if you do that. So that, it's actually really impressive what they've done with that. And that was like specifically from feedback that, feedback that everyone has about every card game, but a lot of feedback from the growing Southeast Asian region who said, and I can say from experience, it is humid as hell in Singapore and I'm sure other countries there. And their cards were not doing great. And it really sucks to have rare foils, 3 per box, and then just have them curl immediately. Oh, yeah. So it was important for them to do. And I think it's so cool that they were able to do that. And other TCGs, again, take note. I don't ever want to hear this problem can't be solved. I don't ever want to hear that again because I've now watched it be effectively solved. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, we've said it for a long time now. Like Weaves knows exactly what they're doing here. They're doing excellent work in kind of experimenting and playing around with not just like the production of these cards, but just all facets of the trading card game space. And yeah, I'm very excited to see what they can continue to do moving forward. But I mean, yeah, so reprints were awesome in this set. Foils are awesome in this set. Also, talking about Mortal Ambition, Dan, how can our listeners and viewers help support Maindeck?
Oh, that is a great question, Taylor. And before we get into kind of diving into the specifics of some various decks that have seen some support, we're just going to drop a little bit of knowledge on you guys for how you can continue to support the channel. What we'd love for you to do, if you have a moment, if you have the time, if you have the willpower, hop down wherever you're on. If you're watching on YouTube, hop down there to where you can hit that little like button. Super helpful. Leave a comment. Let us know how Mortal Ambition's been treating you. What do you think the winners and losers were? And have you cooked in a rice cooker any foils yet? And how do they taste? I've actually legit was also told that they've updated their ink formula on so that, or not, maybe not ink, but they've updated the formula in some ways so that the foils are edible now too. That like, I don't know why that had, maybe it was just like a side benefit, but are you gonna?
I have a protective fractal I could put in a rice cooker and eat if push comes to shove.
That'll be a Patreon video, everyone. You can subscribe. That's another thing you can do, but we're gonna have a Patreon video for that. No problem. But go ahead and interact with the video or the podcast. Leave a 5-star review. Do all that kind of stuff. Super, super helpful. Thank you so much for doing that. A lot of our listeners are not subscribed to the channel as well. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you do, we have so much cool Grand Archive stuff coming on the way. It is like our foils. They are cooking right now. A lot of our cool videos are on the way. So stay tuned for that. And then the other thing you can do, we're going to be traveling a lot this year, Taylor. We're going to be traveling a lot for Grand Archive specifically. And if you want to help support us in those endeavors, a great way to do that is to do your shopping for singles on that online marketplace TCG player, but use our affiliate link, which is easy to remember, bit.ly/shop TCGs. I want to shop TCGs. So I remember shop TCGs. bit.ly/shop TCGs will get you to TCG player, get that market rate for you, and then give a little kickback towards us, which is going to go towards Delta or United or Frontier, God forbid.
No, I can guarantee you will not go towards Frontier.
But it's
Will
gonna
not be
help
happening.
us get out there and meet you guys and get to those events and do all the kind of fun stuff that we're planning to do this year to continue to support this game that we absolutely love. So thank you all so much for your support in that way as well. Taylor, we got some decks that we've been looking at. Got some cards that are spicing up some favorites.
Yes.
And we're going to start with your favorite, Taylor. Go ahead.
Yes,
Take the floor.
There was no Crux in this set. What are you guys doing? But there was a lot of support for Merlin. You love to see it. It's great. We're very excited about all of this. You thought Merlin was good before. This is going to take her to the next level. There are a ton of cards in this set that just smooth everything out, give her some different play styles that you might not have used before, that you might have looked at and thought this is really cool, but like, how does it actually win the game? We have ways to win the game now, so we're good to go. So starting off, just like kind of across the board upgrades for whatever Merlin you're playing. There's a lot of like mage support in general in this set, which makes sense obviously because Kongming is one of the standout champions, the featured champions of the set, right? So a lot of new mage support. Some of like we have some like actual cards that just like draw cards now, which are extremely rare. They're still pretty rare in Grand Archive, but they were just like extremely rare before, and they always came at a really high cost. They were very difficult to use. But now we have cards like Indolent Leisure and Mnemonic Charm and Rising Tide that are going to help Merlin draw cards, keep a large hand size so that she can get to level 3 easily and start hammering away at your opponents with Ghost of Pendragon and Fireballs and what have you. These cards are awesome. They're so much fun to play in Merlin. So the first one, Indolent Leisure, is a 3-cost action. You can draw a card, and then if you have class bonus and level 3 plus, you draw a card into memory. So just very rarely do we see like this kind of straight like draw 2 cards essentially on a card. Usually they come at a fairly big cost, like we've seen it in Turbocharge before, and on Ghost of Pendragon obviously, but like that's a Crux card.
I love that you named 2 of the like lowest costs for drawing 2 when we have Innervate Knowledge requiring you to de-level your champion and have 5 damage on it to get a draw 2 effect. Plus it has a reserve cost that isn't negligible either. Like
it's like reserve 3. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but no one plays Innervate Knowledge. Like that's
what I'm saying.
People play Turbocharge and Ghost of Pendragon, and those are low cost in that like they're easy to use, and the decks that play them are set up to use them, but they're not actually low cost, right? Like anybody who's been playing any amount of Crux and they've played like any amount of games, they know that you're going to draw a Ghost of Pendragon and you're not going to have Regalia out, and you're not going to be able to draw 2, and you're going to be really sad. Same with like Turbocharge, like power cells are not common. You get one off a backup charger, so you're like guaranteed one a game if you're playing that card. If you want to use that to get your power cell. Otherwise, like power cells are not super easy to create and put on your field either. And the support for them is only in Mercurial Heart, so there's not a ton of cards that are like available to help you generate these power cells in the first place. So these are like actually like pretty big cards. Like Turbocharge essentially just means like you can play this card once per game for the most part. Like that's effectively what it reads. Obviously that's not what it actually reads. You can generate more power cells, you can play more turbocharges, but most of the time you're playing one. Whereas Indolent Leisure is essentially like, as long as you're a mage at level 3 or higher, you can draw 2 cards. And that's it. Like that's stellar. That's awesome. We love to see it.
Compared to everything in the past, yes. Indolent Leisure is a welcome change to our just even if you don't get to draw 2, the fact that you can use it early in the game, it's not good, but you can just get a cycle out of it, so you can potentially have the just have the cards down to level with or something, which that's fine.
We've seen plenty of decks utilize that. Juggle Knives has been a huge standout in Luxem Xander for a very long time. Same with like just any kind of like cycling card like that. Previously, like in Merlin, I was playing for the past like month and a half. I've been playing Retold Fortune and Gentle Respite in my Merlin decks in order to get like some pseudo card draw for the most part. And only like if the opponent has more influence than me. So like it's just having like just straight up card draw is so much fun. I'm still playing those in my Fire Merlin builds, by the way, because they're still good. But Indolent Leisure is also fantastic. And Mnemonic Charm is not, I mean, it's card draw in that like it draws a card into your memory, but it's only drawing the one card. It's a 2-cost item. I should have looked this up, but it's a 2-cost item. Cleric Mage Scripture. On enter, draw a card into your memory, and then has class bonus, sacrifice Mnemonic Charm, Empower 2. And Empower 2 is a new mechanic in the set, or Empower, I should say, is a new mechanic in the set. And the next spell you activate this turn activates and resolves as if your champion has that much extra level. So Empower 2 would be level +2. This only draws you one card into memory, so it just replaces itself. It doesn't actually get you ahead. But if you're on Rai level 1, you're on Kongming level 1, you're on Merlin level 2, and you don't have any level counters or anything, you can sacrifice your charms to empower your Indolent Leisures now to get your extra cards early. So like they feed each other really well. And honestly, like Mnemonic Charm has just, for any mage deck you're playing, it just makes the deck play so much smoother.
Mnemonic Charm is a lot like Forest Cake for slimes.
Yep.
In that it's just going to give you that, like the card you want to see turn 1, you just want to drop this down, get some motion, get some slimes put into your into your memory so you can banish them. And it has the same benefits too, in that there are some cheeky interactions out there to blink it as well. Don't forget, the only thing class bonused on Baby Green Slime is the fast activation. And there are certainly some potential wind builds floating around out there that can gain a lot of extra value from Mnemonic Charm before they even go to Empower something, which I'll also say that I feel like Empower has overperformed for us.
100%.
Compared to what I think a lot of people thought it would.
Yep. The first locals we had after release of Mortal Ambition, I was playing Fire Merlin, obviously, because why wouldn't I? The one game I put out 3 Mnemonic Charms before I got to level 3. I got to level 3, got my extra level counters from Merlin and Recollection stuff. And I was able to pop all 3 charms to empower 6 and play an Incarnate Majesty for 1 the turn I got to level 3. And it felt so incredibly broken.
Yeah. Wow.
It just puts you so far ahead, and you didn't pay anything for it, essentially.
Incredible.
And then, of course, like, yeah, you can also just like load up fireballs with them and get lethal earlier too. It's dope. It's so good. Dan was talking about wind cards earlier. I'm about to talk about a water card, since we have a couple new avenues of Merlin open up now too. Rising Tides is another new card that was released. It is a water mage spell action, fast. It costs 2. And if it has class bonus and level 3+, draw a card to memory, and then it has floating memory, and this is unrestricted floating memory. So again, it's like Indolent Leisure. You can play it early if you need to get floating memory, get your advantage that way, or not advantage, but just like help you level or whatever you need to do. And then once you're at level 3+, either through Empower or level counters, or just your champion gets to level 3, you get to draw an extra card to your memory too. And it's at fast speed, so like it's just super flexible. You can hold up any sort of interaction through your opponent's turn. They decide not to play into your interaction while you punish them by playing a Rising Tides and just gain advantage. It's fantastic. And like Dan said, it's opening up new avenues of how to play Merlin. So like previously, most people only played Fire Merlin because you get the power of like these scaling fireballs. In the late game, you're going to be throwing fireballs at your opponent for, 8, 9, 10, 11 damage, however much it needs to be. Now we've got some other options. We've got some other ways to gain advantages in Merlin. And we also have Imperial Seal, the divine relic that Dan spoiled on the channel here however long ago, that lets you sacrifice it or banish it, I guess, to play any cards of any basic element. So now not only can I play my Sweetwater Merlin with my Rising Tides and my Indolent Leisures and my Mnemonic Charms to gain advantage that way, I can also finally have a nice way to close the game out by grabbing my Imperial Seal, popping that, getting my Fireballs, and hitting my opponent for a ton with those now. So oh man, it's such a fun time to be a Merlin player.
You've been trying to play. We've talked about it on the podcast plenty before. You've been playing Water Merlin for a while.
Yep.
But this is the first time where you came to me after one kind of like session and you were like, I don't even think Fire Merlin is right to play. Water Merlin's so good.
Yeah. Water Merlin is fantastic. It's like Fire used to be kind of like the element you needed to play if you wanted to level smoothly and easily too, like with cards like Creative Shock and Hasty Messenger letting you like bin a bunch of floating memory. You don't have to play those cards anymore. You like even Fire. I mean, Fire's playing Creative Shock because that card is still dope, still very good. But like, I don't want to play Hasty Messenger in my Fire Merlin builds. Like that card sucks there. It's horrible. You play it, it attacks for one, it drops one floating memory into the graveyard for you, and then it dies. Like,
yep,
this is horrible. Let me just like draw real cards. But I don't have to play that horrible card anymore, which is awesome. I don't have to play it in Fire. I don't have to play it in Water. And yeah, now that Water has an actual win condition, outside of just like beating with Ghost of Pendragon and Majestic Spirit in sealing Fireballs, like Water Merlin's got a lot of really fun options. And kind of like the last like Water Merlin specific option, the one that's actually like kind of bonkers is Spear of Eventide. This is like, I think low key maybe the best card in the set. Yeah, you know what? Actually, I'm gonna throw that one out there.
Oh wow, okay. That is definitely a Water Merlin fan take on things.
Yeah, this is a certified hot take for sure. Like this, we're gonna go roll up like 3 months from now, and this one's probably not gonna hold water very well, pun intended. But
yeah,
I am excited about it because it is cool as heck.
It is really cool. I mean, let him cook everyone.
Thank you. So Eventide Spear is a 0-cost Regalia weapon, warrior polearm, water. It's a 1/1. The really like bonkers thing here though is as long as an opponent controls 2 or more rested units, you may activate this card from your material deck. So that means as a warrior, it is your main phase. Your opponent has 2 or more rested units out because they just got done attacking you on their turn. You can just activate an Eventide Spear from your material deck free of charge. There's 0 cost involved, which also means that when you are a Crux warrior, such as Merlin or Lorraine level 3s, you can play a Ghost of Pendragon. You can put Eventide Spear back with Ghost of Pendragon to draw 2 cards, and then you can just grab Eventide Spear again for free, for no cost, and then play another Ghost of Pendragon and draw another 2 cards. And now all of a sudden you're like, originally, like you were hindered by how many Regalia you could get out before you got to level 3. You don't even need a Regalia when you get to level 3. Like Water Merlin doesn't even need to start on the rain to get the free sword in order to like really be efficient with Ghost of Pendragon. She starts whatever. You can play Merlin with Tristan level 1 if that's what you really want to do. I wouldn't advocate for that, but like, you think I'm cooking now. I'm sure people are going to be cooking in the future.
But it's got the stipulation where they have to have 2 allies out, but that is such a non-requirement. Like most of the time, even decks like Rye are going to have a dungeon guide, maybe 2 out sometimes, and that's probably the deck where you're least likely to ever get to activate this thing. But against anyone else who's just putting out, another Merlin deck where they got a Hasty and a dungeon guide, or a Stalwart and a dungeon guide or something, or any warrior deck at all, any ally deck, obviously are just they're going to try to have at least 2 allies down all the time. I guess Luxem probably would only have dungeon guides.
Yep. It's another Rye situation, but like 75% of decks are going to be attacking you with allies. So you're just liable.
Have incidental allies out there because some of the best abilities are just tacked on to allies, like Dungeon Guide.
Yeah, exactly. Like and they're not going to hold those dungeon guides back. Like maybe
Yeah,
they will.
please do.
Maybe this is a 5-head play. Like you've got to hold your dungeon guides back because you know your opponent is playing a Water Crux deck, and you can't let them have this chain of ghosts of Pendragon for free. But
Uh,
like that doesn't sound like a winning line. Anyway,
no, it
like
doesn't.
it's just such a sick play. Like if you ever decide to play a Water Crux deck and you get to get even chain like 2 Ghosts of Pendragon together with this, it just feels like you've gained so much advantage. And it's because you have like you
Mm-hmm.
you just draw so many cards. It's insane. So the neat thing though is like, so Imperial Seal also enables Wind Merlin to play these fireballs, which is great. So like Wind Merlin was like kind of a sweet deck in FTC. Like it was low key, extremely good. It took forever to win a game, so like not very many people played it, but it was very strong because it was very difficult to kill. It had a ton of defenses.
Infamously the deck that we were really cooking on way too hard before NA
Yes. Yeah. Yep. And which Ash was like brave enough to still play the day after, and like he did
Corbin.
fairly well. Yeah, and Corbin, and yep.
And Corbin only didn't make it in a top cut because I took his place.
Exactly. Yes. So like this was a good deck. Like this was definitely a deck you could play. It just took forever to finish rounds. So it was really difficult to actually like do well in a big event with it because like just time was a huge factor. But now that you can grab an Imperial Seal and fireball your opponent in a reasonable amount of time, that's maybe not the case because Ventus is still incredibly good. That's a very powerful Regalia that lets you generate a ton of advantage over the course of the game. And they're continuing to print good wind mage spells. So, we might see the return of Wind Merlin here also in the near future. It's not a deck I've played with enough, quite as much as Water Merlin, so I'm not gushing, waxing poetic about it as much as I would Water Merlin, but it's still very strong. And then, like, kind of like the last bit of mage support we got here was just a bunch of removal. Like the removal in this set is kind of bonkers. Like it's very much a step up from what we've seen in the past. Like previously, Focus Flames was like one of the best removal spells in the format, which is just a 2-cost fire action slow that deals 4 damage to an ally. And that's perfectly like that's a good removal spell. But that was pretty much it. We had a bunch of other like really niche things. We had things that didn't do quite as much damage. We had things like hypothermia that were good, but they like it was -4 life to a rested unit.
Yeah.
Which I mean, again, most allies are attacking you, so like you can do that, but it just is not like as impactful as you really want it to be. But now we've got like a lot of really like great fast speed interaction that was released here. Which is great because it prevents you from even taking damage in the first place. Like that was another issue. Even with Focus Flames, all this removal is slow speed. So your opponent is always getting value out of whatever allies they're playing because they're almost certainly going to hit you at least once. And then you can remove it. Now with cards like Nascent Blast and Thunderclap, you can just snipe those allies right at fast speed and they're never going to hit you. Your life total stays in a really comfy spot. And you can slowly take over a game while you clear out their boards, you draw a bunch of cards, and you go to town. So some of the ones I'm really excited about here are Nascent Blast, which is a 3-cost fast action mage spell, cleric mage spell. And you deal 3 damage to target unit, and if Nascent Blast is empowered, you put it into your memory. So it just like sits there and goes back to your hand. You just repeatedly kill things. It's fantastic. We have a lot of repeatable sources of Empower in the set as well. So it's not even like difficult to just set this up where you're always using it every turn if you need to. Tome of Sorcery is a Regalia that comes out, taps to Empower 1. Fractal of Mana is a new Fractal that is in your main deck. You can play that. That also taps to Empower 1. Ton of great ways to add this pretty easily. It's good stuff. Thunderclap, a 4-cost fast fire action. This one is also, I think, a mage spell. And it is level 3+. This card costs 2 less to activate. And this is also deal 4 damage to target ally. So this is essentially like fast speed focus flames, which feels really good. This one's not even like class bonus, so anybody can play it. Focus Flames did have like a mage class bonus to reduce cost by 1, so it does get down to 1 in like mage decks, but really anybody could play that for 2, and 2 is a perfectly fine rate for that. And now you're basically getting that at fast speed. And I can't say basically because like you do have to be level 3 plus to play it for 2, but it's still like just super impactful. You have all these cards now that really can like hit a lot of things for a lot of damage, and there's not much your opponent can really do to take advantage of that, right? Like previously, all the allies that were really popular were like 2/3s. And Thunderclap dealing 4 is awesome because not only does it kill all those, but like your opponent can't even favorable wins now to save them.
Yeah.
And come out really ahead. Like Thunderclap says, that's fine. I'm dealing the extra health you're adding with favorable anyway. Thank you.
That 4 damage is like such an important threshold. And I think Nascent Blast is really good because of its ability to just be repeatable. But the fact that it doesn't hit 4 means that it's going to, like you said, the favorable wins, very common win play already. But we also have a number of units, and actually an increasing number of units that are that have 4 health and will take over a game. Like we look at these things like Ace and Protector has been one since set 1, but all of us who have played the game for any amount of time have had that game happen at one point where a Protector drops and you just don't have the way to remove it, and the game just immediately turns around towards the opponent because he just controls the board with his presence. And yeah, that 4 is a nice threshold where I was immediately, I think I overlooked Thunderclap because I missed that it was fast, but the fact that it's fast and deals 4 damage to anything, like that could potentially be a huge player in the game depending on where things go.
Yeah, exactly. And we're even seeing like good water spells now too, like that. We have Glacial Evocation. This one only does up to like 3 damage to an ally, so it's a 2-cost fast water action. You deal 2 damage to target ally, or if it's rested, you deal 3 damage to it instead. It's like you haven't quite hit that threshold, but again, that's just good removal. Water hasn't had. And then in the same vein as like Focused Flames, we have Cone of Frost, which is a 3-cost slow water action mage spell with class bonus, cost 1 less to activate. And then this deals anywhere from like 2 to 6 damage, depending on if you're level 1, 3, or 5. So it's got 3 different lines of text. They all say deal 2 damage to up to 1 target unit, and they're all preceded by either level 1 plus, level 3 plus, or level 5 plus. So if you're level 1, you're dealing 1 damage to 1 thing. If you're level 3, you're either dealing 2 damage to 2 things or 4 damage to 1 thing. And level 5 is either 2 to 3 different things or 6 to 1, or however you want to split that up. So it's just like, again, like you thought that 4 threshold was important. If you can get to level 5, it doesn't even matter if they have anything that buffs their 4 health allies further, because now you can deal 6 damage. So we just have like a lot of really sweet playable removal.
Cone also importantly can hit champions too, where I don't think some of the other ones we're looking at could.
That's correct. Yep.
Which means that it is another one of the mythical water finishers that we are starting to see a bit more of as well. Just a potential chunk of 6 damage that is absolutely nothing to scoff at in getting the game close when you get to that stage of the game. So it's so many good. There's so many good cards, so much good stuff in the set.
Yep. Yeah, it's fantastic. And since we're talking about mage removal, I didn't have a ton of stuff for wind, but a notable reprint here is Disorienting Winds, which was originally printed in Dawn of Ashes, which is it's a 5-cost wind action mage spell, slow. It has efficiency, so it costs level less to activate. So if you're level 3, it only costs you 2 instead of 5. And you return target ally to its owner's hand, and you draw a card. So I mean, just like a really good mage role player in general. Getting removal that it replaces itself is great, and even though it doesn't like just send the ally to the graveyard at all, it does get it out of the way or makes your opponent replay it. So can really kind of mess up with your opponent's tempo and how they want to play the game. So just
Taylor, there's so much good removal in here. Like these ally decks have to be basically dead in the water, right?
I mean, that's my hope. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I like ally decks quite a bit, but there are a lot of beefy new allies here in this set as well. Um, Water Ally specifically is getting a ton of support. There's a lot of stuff in this set for them, and like the one that pops out to me the most. And Wind Allies might also be able to take advantage of a very similar card, but the one that pops out to me the most is Ju Ying Shadowmare. I hope I pronounced that correctly. It's a 2-cost water unique ally, a Mage Tamer Beast Horse, which is a 3/3. So it's a 3/3 for 2. It does have Pride 3, so you can't attack with it unless you're level 3 or higher. But it also has, as long as you control a water element unique human ally, Ju Ying loses Pride and has Stealth and True Sight. So like there's plenty of ways to remove Pride 3 now, and you can be Spirit, you can play a Ju Ying Shadowmare, you can play a Lunette, and all of a sudden you're attacking for 3 plus 1 from Lunette, and all the allies your opponents play enter rested. And they can't attack Shadowmare because it has Stealth.
You've been playing around with this, or we played against this a little bit at locals too, and it's I believe Genshin Impact, I think, tells me that this is pronounced Joying, but
Thank you.
That's what I got from that. I don't know. Someone will have to correct us in the comments if there is an actual correct way to pronounce this. It's just similar to an area in the game, so I'm going off of that. But yeah, I mean this 3/3 Stealth True Sight, and you mentioned there's another horse in Wind. We have Dilu.
Yep.
Dilu, the Auspicious Charger, is a 2-cost 3/4 unique ally, Tamer, Ranger, Beast Horse with once again Pride 3, and has, as long as you control a wind element unique human ally, Dilu loses Pride and has Vigor instead. So it has the extra life and gets Vigor instead of True Sight and Stealth. But it also costs 1 less, and 2-cost 3/4s. 2-cost 3/4s are that's cracked, guys. That's insane.
That's unheard of. That's the only time we get 2-cost 3/4s is if they also draw you 2 cards. So like, you just never see this.
Oh, jeez. Well, yeah. So anyway, though, like even if you can't keep, one thing people are really like concerned about with these is like, how do I make sure I can always get a wind element unique human ally? It's a lot of stipulations. There are a lot of those for the early game where it's felt like it's not unreasonable to find them. But if you're playing a deck that, I mean, in a pure allies deck, you won't go to level 3. But if you did have a deck where you went to level 3, potentially, it still is a 2-cost 3/4. It still is a Ghost of Pendragon that doesn't draw you cards, which is still a thing you can put on the board. That's not unreasonable at all.
And there were 3 new wind unique allies that were released in the set as well.
Yeah, and they're good.
So they are pretty good. So like, it's not like Dilu is something that you can't play. That's definitely something that you need to be watching out for. I actually think Shadowmare is fairly likely to be like attacking when you meet the Pride requirement, because a lot of the water decks are going to be playing Scepter of Lumina as well.
Yeah,
so
true.
Like, not only can you get to Pride 3, you also probably don't have a ton of cards left. So he's a 2-cost. You're still gonna you could probably get 2 cards together to play him. So like, he's just going to be like an all-star in water allies, regardless of whether you have the unique allies or not. He's going to be a menace. So these 2 allies I think are going to be like, pretty big metagame shapers, as far as like, they're going to dictate, I think, whether we see like ally decks in general in the format, just because they're so strong and cost so little to get out there. We also have Sword Saint of Eventide, which is it's a 1/3, I think. Let me find it here.
Yeah, it's a
Sword
2-cost 1/3 ally warrior human with, on enter, look at the top card of your deck. You may put it into your graveyard. And then class bonus, as long as you have 4 or more water element cards in your graveyard, Sword Saint of Eventide gets +1. So it becomes a 2/3 for 2 that potentially put like a floating memory in your graveyard or something.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah, Sword Saint of Eventide is going to be kind of sweet. We've already seen a 1/3 for 2 that becomes a 2/3 see play in Imperial Recruit. So there's lots of precedent already that this is like a good enough rate. It also has the added benefit of putting cards into your graveyard for your advantage, like you mentioned, Dan. So I'm expecting this to see a ton of play in Water Ally decks as well. It's pretty much everything a lot of these Water decks want to see. In the same vein, we have another Sword Saint in Fire, which I think is going to be kind of bonkers. Sword Saint of Everflame, which is a 3/2 for 4 Fire ally warrior human. And then it has class bonus 2 reserve, banish this card from your graveyard. Target fire element, weapon, or ally gets +2 power until end of turn. So this is just like a huge stat stick. And this is like a stat stick you do not mind that your opponent is going to be blowing up in fairly short order, because it's going to hit for 3 and then it's going to, at not really much extra cost, help you hit for even more later on.
Yeah, the Everflame, I think when we first read it too, I had initially missed that it could target weapons or allies. It's actually a really spicy, like pre-rec play when you get to that late game to just, you have a few cards. You only have literally can just have 2 cards left in your hand and you go, actually this turn you didn't kill this ally. So now it's going to be hitting for +2 and it costs you almost nothing to do. And it's going to find these thresholds that are going to just catch people off guard. They thought they were safe, but actually boom, 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 you're loose.
Yeah. Yep. And even if you're not playing it for like 4 cost, which I think is very reasonable. When I first saw this card, like my mind originally went to Cemetery Sentry, which is another 4 cost fire ally that like generates you a little bit of incremental advantage that has been like more or less fine. You've really only seen it in like dedicated like Fiery Momentum or Erupting Rhapsody decks just to help like fill up your graveyard faster. But like three power is a lot of power. So like you might just play Sword Saint because you want that 3 power. Like I think that's a totally reasonable line. But on top of that, it gives you something to do with your Creative Shocks and your Hasty Messengers and all the other cards in Fire that want you to discard Fire's cards, like the new Dragon's Dawn Polearm. It gives you like something to do that generates your game by like threatening your opponent instead of just trying to like generate card advantage through the material deck. Previously, you had to like drop fire, or you had to drop floating memory to a lot of these cards in order to get like a good advantage out of them. But dropping Sword Saint of Everflame to like a Creative Shock is kind of dope.
Especially if you're Merlin level 3, so you're both a warrior and a mage, so you're going to get the 2 damage from dropping the fire, and then you're going to get the 2 damage from buffing your sword or something and swinging.
Ooh, yeah. We should have included this card in the mage removal section. You are correct. This is pretty spicy. But yeah, Sword Saint of Everflame is a card I'm hoping to play a bunch of in the upcoming couple of months. I think that's going to be dope. But back to the sweet water allies, we have another really aggressive card in Halocline Scout. So this is a 3 cost water ally, assassin, warrior, human. It's a 1/3. Has class bonus on enter, rest target unit. So that's any unit, ally, or champion. And then also has class bonus. Other allies you control get +1 power as long as they're attacking rested units. So this is just going to be like a huge like beater in water allies. This is the kind of bonkers. You can sit there, you can rest your opponent's champion, you can drop this, and now all of a sudden your snow fairies are attacking your opponent's champion for 2 instead of 1. Like this guy's going to be insane in water allies.
Yeah, it's not only a, like people are calling it, it's a banner knight that doesn't require level 2 because of that ability just to rest your opponent's champion, even if they're not a champion that normally attacks, and then punch in with everything for more except for itself. But it is Snow Fairy copies number, whatever, 5 through 8 or wherever you're at with your Snow Fairies in your deck, in that it can come down against those interceptors, especially things like Majestic Spirit or something, and get them out of the way, rest them, rest a Taunter, rest that Lustrous Slime that is blocking your progress from closing the game, and then crash in with everything. It's dual purpose. It's a very strong ally.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to make decks that rely on interceptors really have to like find another way to defend themselves. Slimes, especially, is a big one. Like baby gray slimes have always been getting in the way too. Like not just lustrous slimes. Merlin, obviously, Incarnate Majesty, Majestic Spirit gets in the way all the time. They play a lot of Stalwart Shieldmates as well. This gets around both of those. Obviously, still, if the Majestic Spirit's out, you've got to figure out a way to get around the half damage that Majestic Spirit provides. But it's just, yeah, incredible finisher here for Water. And then kind of the last one, what might be Shadowmare's best friend is Hua. Where did she go? I had her on my page and I lost her.
Yeah, I will pull her up for you. It's
here we go.
Jia Hao Dun is my best
Yep.
guess. And she
Glory
is
Seeker.
a 3-cost unique ally, Ranger, Warrior, Human, 1/4 with ranged 2 and class bonus. As long as you control a sword or bow weapon, Jia Hao Dun gets +1 power. So that makes her a 3-cost 2/4 in Lorraine.
Yep.
Like basically always.
Yes. Yeah, she's crazy. Like again, we were just talking about how 3 health was always like threshold. 4 is going to be the new threshold for sure. Like this is definitely a staple in any sort of Water Lorraine allies. I think you'll see this a lot actually in non-Water or non-Lorraine Water allies, just because of her unique status to enable Shadowmare, and also just being a 1/4 like that's still, even if you're only attacking for 1/4 is a lot of life to get through, and she's going to sit there and clog up the board and help you get through situations where like you've got a Lunette out, you've got her out, so you've just got like a couple of 1-power people out, and your opponent plays a 2/3, even though it's rested, like you can still answer that with Lorraine's Sword, or maybe a Snow Fairy comes out or something. But like eventually that's going to add up. But the important part here is the 4 life. That's just such a high number. Like usually you've got Hefe, like we were talking about earlier with Ace and Protector. It just comes at a much higher cost to get that much life on an ally.
Yeah, I think just that combination of Jui Ying and Xie Hao Dun having a 3/3 stealth and then a 2/4 chunky thing, the thing you have to get rid of to disable the 3/3 stealth true sight, like with given Water's kit in general, presents some really obnoxious boards that not everyone's going to be able to actually break before that Jui Ying has just done a ton of damage.
Yep. Yeah. So first of all, you're much braver than I am, attempting to call these cards by their names rather than their titles.
I do what I can.
Props to you. I will continue to call them Shadowmare and Glory Seeker. But yeah, I mean, Water Allies is just like another big winner from this set. I'm expecting them to make quite a few waves actually in Toronto. Pun intended again. So like if you're getting ready for Toronto, I think you have to have a plan for how to deal with a 3/3 stealth true sight for 2. That's just going to be something if you can't answer that, it's going to be, I think, a rough tournament for you. In the same way, if you don't have a plan for Merlin, like again, I mean, that one goes without saying for the most part. I think everybody who's preparing for Ascent is like, yeah, obviously I have to know how to play against Merlin and have a plan for it. But she's going to be a little more beefy this time around. Like she's been hitting the gym, she's been lifting weights, she's been reading her spell books, like she's ready to go. So,
and I would say not only there are some specific decks that you're going to want to be thinking about, but one thing that we're, I think, really seeing happening in this format is from other decks, starting to become from new decks, from like Jin especially, but from other decks that have been really creeping up in their meta share as well. It's really the time when, if you are going into this tournament and you've got no plan whatsoever for opponents' Regalia, I don't think you're going to do well. I don't think you're going to get anywhere.
Water decks get like a pass because they're just slotting in for Fracture Eyes in the first place because of floating memory.
Yeah,
But
that's a
like
plan though. I mean,
that, no, 100%. And yeah, if you are a fire deck and you're a wind deck, you don't have a Fracturized, so you got to be figuring out what your deck is going to be doing against against the Nikos of the world, against the Merlins of the world, because not only is Merlin reliant on her swords to get advantage with Ghost of Pendragon, she's now going to be reliant on like Tome of Sorcery for Empower and getting advantages that way. You need to have answers for these. You need to have answers for Nico's giant armory of lashes and armors and shields and all that good stuff. Jin, the new Exio warrior. This man like lives for Regalia.
yeah,
He has a spear that like hits for like 9, and he has a plated armor that lets him draw a card every turn and gives him another 7 health on top of his already like 28 life. So like this man lives and dies by this. Like you've got to have some answers for yours. So if you're fire, you need to be packing your Spurn to Ashes. Reduced to Ash is not going to be good enough because a lot of these Regalia cost 1 or more.
I mean, that was one of the huge, like, surprising things about this. I think Jin has the strongest Regalia we've seen in the game. In my opinion, those 2 Exia Regalia, the Shuangji of Sacrifice and the Berserker Plate, are just, they're the 2 Regalia I've seen so far where if you just let that sit out for even 2 turns, you start to get buried in just like either you just lost the game because you gave him a bunch of free Shuangji things, or he just was drawing a bunch of cards and like was really hard to kill and stuff. And so I don't think, we saw from Mercurial Heart Reduced to Ash immediately shot in popularity, and Reduced to Ash had some insane plays. It still has some insane plays. The things like someone brings out Quicksilver and then goes to activate the banish, and you go in response, I'll Reduce to Ash the Quicksilver with its trigger on the stack, which then gives the opponent the choice of, would you like to permanently banish a card from your material deck or not? Right.
Yep.
So it just disables, it totally disables their Quicksilver play, which shuts down some powerful slime plays. That kind of stuff was really good. And that's the thing that's going to be a little bit of a fight now to figure out. And that, like, it is still good potentially to have Reduced Ash, but all these good Regalia now, they cost 1 or 2 or something, depending on some of the Nico stuff, but like they cost more than 0. And if the meta share continues to increase with, okay, I'm going to face Nico, I'm going to face Jin. If all your packing is Reduced to Ash, that's going to be a little bit dicey for you.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, wind decks need to find an answer as well. They don't have anything as permanent as Spurn to Ash or Reduced to Ash. Dematerialize is the big one that shoots out in my mind, and all that does is just return to the material deck. But like that might be enough as long as you're planning around that, like, and planning to end the game in that turn you have after you send back a Vapor Jet Shield or a Berserker Plate. That's all you're going to need. But you do need to start figuring out how to answer those in wind as well.
Longtime podcast listeners know that we said a while back that Dematerialize was being slept on. And the meta never really was like, actually, straight up. I think that card could really surprise some Nikos in the previous metagame. I think, we talked at the end of the last episode, we were just figuring the metagame out. And I think a potential next step for the metagame was the rise of wind decks who are just like dematerializing Nikos and stuff and just like keeping them off of having anything cool the whole game, that they keep spending all their floating memory on that instead. Is totally, that there's a potential step. But now again, like if the Jin is not, there's some fast Jin plays that get Shuangji out right away to use it. But if you can just kind of shut down that initial use of it and then dematerialize it, force him to lose another card and take 5 more damage again, you can get Jin to kill himself. That's a thing that can happen. You can effectively get him up there to where it's like, oh, cool. End of your turn, Tempest downfall you.
Yep.
You lose. Or Tempest downfall is a slow, actually. I think
No, Tempest downfall is a fast.
It's fast. Okay, no, I'm thinking of the new one. There's the new one that's suppressed and then it comes back. That's slow.
Oh, yes. Yep.
I was doing some wind kind of, early stage brewing the other day. And so I was looking at some of that stuff. But yeah, Tempest Downfall is the fast one. So that absolutely works. So I think Dematerialize is one that we can think about a little bit. But just Zephyr in general is what a lot of Wind decks have.
I was going to mention Zephyr because like Fracturize, a lot of Wind decks already are running it. The thing about Zephyr is like that just is not going to be a good answer over a prolonged game. Just because it costs, like, they don't have to pay anything to get it back. They just get their Regalia back right at end of turn. Whereas like with Dematerialize, right? Like Nico, you can't, if you're dematerializing Nico like you suggested, and she has to like get these Regalia back out just in order to play the game, she's not going to have any floating memory at all to hit you with a Ravaging Finale. She's not going to be able to like play that just because she's been using it all to replay all these Regalia, right?
Exactly.
Like that's really important to tax your opponent's resources in this way. Again, Dematerialize is kind of insane against Incarnate Majesty and Majestic Spirit as well, where like Zephyr, removes it for the turn. Like Dematerialize says, hey, you have to go find another Incarnate Majesty somehow, like either through a Crux or just drawing a fresh one. Or this is going to be a bad time for you. So like this might end up being a much more important card than it appeared to be in previous seasons.
I want to talk a little bit because this is our pre-Toronto episode, and I don't know if this is going to happen there, but this is a play that is on my mind too. Zephyring has the obvious disadvantage of when the target for Zephyr comes back, they get any on-enter abilities. There's an interaction here that needs to be considered, which is that Shuang-Ji deals 5 damage when it comes into play, and Jin can only die during his end phase, which is when suppressed targets come back into play. Okay, so there is a world for sure where, again, we talked earlier, but the math for Jin is complicated, and Jin players, especially at Toronto, are going to be weaker on their math game. This is where they're just going to be figuring it out for the first time. Mm-hmm. And if I was going there, I actually somewhat likely I'd play Jin if I was, and I would also be weaker on my math game. Just to not say everyone's bad. Like I'm bad too, but it's going to be so possible to Zephyr Shuang-Ji's and they go, oh, but I'm at 24. Yep. You're dead. You lose the game. Maybe they have played out. You have double Zephyr the plate, Zephyr the Shuang-Ji, and then whoops.
Yep. Looks like it's game over, friend. I mean, like it's just gonna be really important to be able to interact with what your opponent is getting out of their material deck, because first of all, that's already been like one of the most powerful parts of the game, right? Like we've already said, the materialization phase is like the most important phase. It's why you go first most of the time when you can, so you can get the first materialize phase. Like this is really what you want. And so you need to be able to control what your opponent is doing with their materialized phase as well at this point in the game now. Like there's just too many important pieces that these decks use to function. You can't afford to just like sleep on a lot of this stuff and say, yeah, I'll beat them some other way, or I'll let them do what they're going to do. I'm going to play my Grand Crusader's Ring into my Water Resonance Bauble into my backup Charger, and I'm just going to draw a bunch of extra cards because like they're just going to be like, hey, that's fine. I'm going to play my Berserker plate. I'm going to play my Shang-Chi. I'm going to beat you down, or I'm going to play my Vapor Jet Shield. I'm going to play my Magebane Lash and again beat you down and not take any damage. Or I'm going to play my Gaia's Blessing and I'm going to play a million slimes off the top of my deck. Like everybody has really impactful Regalia now that like can make or break a game. And it's really important to be able to answer these things.
Yeah, that has been one of our like huge takeaways right away from exploring the kind of the early metagame is like, you can't just let people do their own thing right now. You need to be packing the interaction, but thankfully the set is full of options for interacting with your opponent's board. We've seen some powerful cards especially in advanced elements for both of the new champions as well. And there's going to be, it's just bring it full circle. It's going to be so exciting to see what everybody starts to gravitate towards in Toronto. And here's my early warning again for everybody. This is the first event of the new metagame, and it is not the defined metagame. Whatever comes out of Toronto, it's the Toronto metagame we're gonna see, and there's going to be so much. That's not even like, I don't even think it's gonna be dominated by any one thing. I think it's gonna be crazy diverse. I think this top 8's gonna have it like 6 different decks at least, and it's gonna be sick. But we'll see.
I mean, yeah, I think every deck that top 8 in Singapore has a very good shot at top 8ing in Toronto as well. And now there's 2 new champions thrown into the mix, and old strategies also got revamped a little bit. Like, it's incredibly hard to predict what's actually going to happen. Nothing really seems like there's a standout, like, first place winner take all deck at the moment. So it's going to be the Wild West out east in Toronto. And I'm very much looking forward to it. I can't wait to kind of sit down round 1, see what's going on, show off kind of what I've come up with and what we on the team have come up with. And I think we're going to have a really, really fun time out there. But now I can hear my mom yelling at me to go to bed. So actually I have to sign out.
No.
No, I'm just kidding. She's not. But yeah, so this was the first podcast from my parents' basement. Hopefully this will be next 2 weeks from now will be the last podcast from my parents' basement, but we'll see. Who knows?
I'd stay there for a while more, do some more pulls in the next banners.
Yeah, I mean, so these upcoming banners look pretty dope. So like New Vallette's coming back, and I don't have him yet, so yeah, we'll see. But thank you, listeners and viewers, for tuning in. This episode of the Recollection Step was hopefully very insightful into kind of the upcoming changes here. We're going to be back in 2 weeks, hopefully with some sweet, fun tech for Jin and Kongming, and with obviously a recap of what happened in Toronto, and how Maindeck Jordan has brewed his way to victory in a first place spirit with whatever crazy shenanigans he's getting up to.
Whatever he's doing.
He's always got something fun in the tank. But until then, thank you very much for listening. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
Bye, everyone.